Now, let's get today started, if you wish, as we raise the curtain with the Sub-Saharan Africa's urban awakening, catalyzing economic growth and job creation. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Carlos Mejia. Carlos Mejia is a senior urban economist with the World Bank, urban resilience and land global practice in Nairobi, Kenya. He specializes in municipal finance and urban recovery operations across Sub-Saharan Africa. He's got experience bridging private enterprise and city strategy and giving us an exceptional starting point for addressing Africa's rapid urbanization. Please, Mr. Carlos, you have the floor. Good morning.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here in Abuja, presenting the results of the work of our team. So what I'm going to share with you today is a preview of a flagship report of the World Bank Group, so called the Sub-Saharan African Urban Awakening. So this report will be launched in a few weeks in the fall. So I want to basically just share with you very quick insights of this report. And you guys are actually among the very first audiences to hear about this report. So the central proposition of the report is actually simple. And it is that Africa's urban transition is not primarily a demographic story. It's actually one of growth and jobs and economic growth in the region. So, and this connects very well with what we were listening yesterday from Madame Digi Ngozi and actually the Governor Cardoso about the demographic dividend and how Governor was also explaining how the population actually is growing faster than the economy. And the truth is that in this fragmenting global economy, the region's most dependable growth engine is actually domestic, and it is its own cities, it is actually its own consumer markets. So this is as much as a resilient agenda as it is also a growth agenda. So let me start quickly with a quick word on the report itself. So this report applies the World Bank Group's new jobs framework, and it takes three distinct policy spaces. So it takes the cities, it takes the peripheries of those cities, and then the towns. So, and we're going to go into those three more in detail. So this report draws on local knowledge from the African School of Economics. It also draws on spatial data science from the European Commission's Joint Research Center, and also extensive consultations, including consultations with the private sector that we organize at the regional level, so in Nigeria, in South Africa as well, and in Kenya, inviting different private sector actors from those regions. And maybe, Harinder, let me also admit a debt to this forum. 13 years ago, you had the work on Africa 2050. And there was a main question asked, that is like whether this continent, this region, will converge with the rest of the world by mid-century. So on this report, we actually provide key insights on how that convergence can actually be a reality for this region. And essentially it's about harnessing the rapid urbanization that this region is experiencing. So maybe let me just take 2 minutes to set the stage and what's happening now in the region. So if you look at the graph, I mean, between 1950 and 2025, this region added 742 million urban residents. Now, between now and 2050, it will add another 748 million, as much urban growth in 25 years as in the previous 75 years. Now, everywhere else, urbanization at this scale has come hand in hand with rapid productivity growth and structural transformation. And that's also something that Governor Cardoso was mentioning yesterday. But here in this region, we have seen that payoff of urbanization has not yet arrived. And we have seen that the GDP per capita has stalled at around $4,400. And the region still needs roughly 15 million new jobs every single year. So another interesting fact that we found on this report is that nearly half of the urban space that this region will need by 2050 is yet to be built. So whatever will get built in this decade will actually shape the urban form of the next few years and even the century. So the window of opportunity is now open, but it's also closing very fast. So this is the time to action, and this is what also the report highlights as one of the key messages. Now, why should we believe that urban areas can deliver these jobs that are needed? So we have here a bunch of economists, and you guys are also familiar with the agglomeration effects. Now, this is one of the most reliable forces in economics, and is that when firms and the workers, they concentrate, so labor markets they deepen, the firm access more diverse suppliers, and the knowledge spills over, and these are the same forces that power a structural transformation into higher value industry and services as well. So the evidence is also striking. So if we take the doubling the urban density is associated with roughly a 17% increase in wages. And this continues a World Bank economic geography tradition going back to our 2009 World Development Report. And it's a particular pleasure to say this in front of Indermit Hill, who was actually one of the lead author of this report. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the report focuses on these three typology of urban areas. So the cities, the peripheries, and the town. So for each of those three, we have different policy regulations and responses, because each one of those will require different policy responses from those governments. So starting with cities, we have around 503 million people. So some of those people, they have jobs, but mainly in the informal sector, small-scale enterprises, and they fail to cluster workers where workers are connected to those jobs. So there is a lack of clustering in these areas. Then if we take the peripheries, with 165 million people, this is where almost all the physical expansion will land. But what we have found in the report is that these peripheries are actually unprepared. So there hasn't been planning in terms of these peripheries, and this will concentrate most of that urban growth. So what can countries and governments start doing now to prepare for this urban expansion? And then we have the towns with more than 15,000 small towns, but they also remain half rural, and most of the time these towns are overlooked. So across all three of these urban areas, the same levers apply, and these are the foundational infrastructure, the regulatory environment for both the urban areas but also the businesses, and then private capital mobilization. Now, all of these are resting in governance. So there is a dedicated chapter, and as the DG was mentioning yesterday, the leadership is quite important. So all of these three are connected in this governance chapter to understand the lack of authority, ability, and also resources, and what can be done to tackle these issues. So very briefly, in terms of the cities, so the report, and you can go more in detail into the actual report, but just to summarize, I mean, we use a machine learning exercise to actually predict employment across the map. So we built a job concentration index to understand where the jobs are located in these urban areas. And what we have found is that in every size class of the cities, whether cities are large, medium, or small scale, Sub-Saharan African cities, they show a weaker jobs clustering than cities in East Asia and South Asia regions. And this is more pronounced for medium and large cities in this region. Now, let me be maybe precise with this. I mean, this is not just a density problem, it's also an accessibility problem. And this is something that you guys experience every day, going to your works in traffic, long and expensive commutes as well. And also the fragmented informal transport. So these agglomeration benefits are long forgone. So the report also provides a couple of basically recommendations and agenda on these cities. And we don't have the time to go over all of those, but basically it's promote a job-rich clusters where firms can actually concentrate in these cities. And we talked already about the agglomeration effects when these firms clusters, the benefits that that will also bring. The good thing is, like, we already have good examples in the region. So the report is actually very good at bringing examples from the same regions, from other countries, like in Kenya, like in South Africa, even here in Nigeria, especially for the connecting the workers to housing to jobs. We have an example from Lagos, on how they also basically partner with informal bosses. I think they're called the Danfos in Lagos, and how that's a way of integrating this informal with the formal transport system. Now, the peripheries, and I think this chart is very revealing because it shows why the peripheries actually deserve their own chapter in the report. And you can see that between now and 2050, the city populations will grow by about 85%, and their physical footprint by about 90%. If you look at the chart, I mean, comparing to other regions, no other region come close to this of Sub-Saharan Africa. Now, this expansion will happen whether or not the plans are in place or whether or not the authorities prepare for it. So I guess the only question here is whether it is going to be organized as an expansion. So you can see also in the maps here the sheer scale and speed of expansion in the region's three most populous cities, so Lagos, Kinshasa, and Luanda. And what we have seen is, like, where expansion on this scale outpaces planning, it becomes fragmented, usually leapfrog development, which is expensive to serve with infrastructure, destructive of agglomeration, and locking in higher costs for decades. So the important aspect here is, like, how can we start thinking about planning in an organized manner, knowing that this urbanization is happening and it's going to start happening, and the expansion will be mostly produced in these periphery areas. Now, the report goes into detail, and this is something that you can go into the specific chapter about the peripheries, like what is the two complementary actions that a lot of local governments can start doing to prepare these periphery areas. So one is about investing in arterial grids, and it goes into details about, and supported by the literature, into the importance of, like, the size of the roads, at least roads of like 30 meters wide, about a kilometer apart, to create these arterial grids. And now the second action is within those blocks, you enable then the landowners to pool and subdivide land. So the land pooling and contributing. So this also benefits the landowners. It makes them participate of the land value capture. And then at the same time, it provides the local governments to provide the subdivision, and also basically add the subdivision, but basically add also the special economic aspect of it. And this is something that we have seen in East Asia playbook, where they have also crowding in private capital by basically promoting the special economic zones integrated into those cities. And then we have the towns. So the towns this is one of the most surprising findings of the report, because actually across the cities that were studied and the countries, the household expenditure per adult in small towns is below that of rural levels. And once price and education differences are considered, they're still below that of actually rural areas. So towns, they're not only lagging to cities, they're also lagging to the countryside. So what we have seen is that many of these towns, although they have been overlooked, they have very locational advantages. Some of these towns, they are located in transport corridors, some in agricultural hinterlands, tourism assets, energy projects, and also border markets. So the policy answer for the towns is to start basically segmenting and having like a tailored approach, identify which are the low potential towns, and for these towns, invest in the people. So invest basically in focus on basic infrastructure, basic services, and connectivity. But then when you identify which are the high potential towns, you can have packages that are combining foundational infrastructure, the regulatory reforms, with also administrative reclassification where appropriate. Because at the end of the day, these towns, especially when you look at the economic corridors, they're the ones that have the potential, and they will become the future cities. So they have the potential for economic growth and also to support that economic corridor activity. Now, as I mentioned, we have a chapter dedicated basically to the governance aspect. Because at the end of the day, nothing of this will happen without the delivery of authority, capability, and finance all together. So basically, in the terms of authority, we need clear mandates where the full decentralization is distant. So we have seen that in Lagos State and Kampala. They also show this special jurisdiction model. In terms of capabilities, so the lack of skills that we have in a lot of these urban areas, it is also one of the bigger issues that we need also to tackle. So the shortage of this urban professional is also binding. And this is something that we have an example from Ethiopia's Civil Service University, and they show how to build that pipeline. And then on finance, so the resources that are needed to change and to build that capacity. So there we have seen the property tax, the land-based financing, even though those are the long-term goal, but I mean, we also need to see how to bring private capital financing into this financing of this urban expansion. Now, I will say that if you have to remember one line of this presentation is just to emphasize the message that I provided at the beginning, that urban expansion, urban growth is inevitable. Now, but productive urbanization, it is a policy choice. So let me just close by basically, these are the partners and supporters that have made this the study possible. Then you can scan this QR code to be alerted when the report is going to be launched, and you can download it and be one of the first to also get access to the report. So I'm going to leave this link for now, but maybe let me with this close and just emphasize this. So the key messages of the report are urbanization is happening and it's happening fast. We have a lot of young populations moving to cities and they need jobs. So estimated is that 15 million jobs will be needed per year. So how cities, how governments, local governments start preparing to work on the cities to expand and plan the peripheries that will allow for this expansion and for the jobs to actually be clustered to benefit from these agglomeration effects is one of the key aspects that these reports highlight. But the reports is also rich in a lot of examples that will also tell you that this is not impossible. Other countries have done it, and especially countries in the region, similar to some of these locations, have done it. So what can then the local government start doing to basically promote this urbanization at a speed that actually promote the urban jobs and urban growth? Thank you very much. Let me now introduce Professor Adamu Ahmed. He's a Vice Chancellor at Ahmadu Bello University. He's based in Zaria, Nigeria, but has come all the way here to Abuja to be with us. He's an urban planner by profession, so he will share a few remarks on the topic of urbanization in the region. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you very much. Let me first extend special congratulations to the Center for the Study of the Economies of Africa for organizing this 7th edition of the forum, but also to appreciate the organizing committee and the sponsors, particularly the Central Bank of Nigeria, for extending this invitation to me. Thank you very much. Let me begin by first congratulating Carlos Mejia for a very stimulating paper on one of the most important development questions facing our continent. The paper rightly challenges us to think of the role of cities as drivers of economic growth and job creation. Let me say again that I fully agree with the central proposition that urbanization can provide one of the most viable pathways for Africa's economic transformation. Across history, no region has achieved sustained economic growth without productive urbanization, and that's the point that Mr. Carlos kept emphasizing. The real challenge for Africa is therefore not without urbanization matters, but how to make it productive. I think these are conversations that we continue to have over the last 24 hours. Let me again remind us a very important point that Mr. Carlos has stated, that the productivity of cities derives largely from agglomeration economies and economies of scale. This arises from the advantages of location, the concentration of people and firms, larger production systems, specialization, lower transport costs, and faster exchange of goods, services, and ideas. In essence, like he has said, cities create opportunities for firms and workers to become more productive simply because they operate in close proximity to one another. I think this is by way of emphasis to remind us of where the strength of productivity in city comes from. Distinguished participants, let me also take us back to history, which reminds us that urbanization and economic growth is not a new phenomenon. The world's earliest cities, which include, through our memory, Uruk, Jericho, and Susa in Turkey and Iran, emerged because of strategic locations that facilitated trade and economic exchange. It's also important to state that Africa has an equally distinguished urban history. We could remember very well cities like Karma, Aksum, Memphis, in Sudan, Mali, and Ethiopia, including Mogadishu, derived their strength from advantages that riverine and coastal locations provided for them. We're also very clear about how Kano in Nigeria prospered as a major commercial center along the Trans-Saharan trade route. And I think this is a point to remind us of the value of transportation network in aiding productive growth. The location of these early African urban centers tells us that Africa definitely is not experiencing urbanization for the first time. What is new is the unprecedented pace and character of today's urban growth. Like Mr. Carlos has said, much of the urban growth, sadly, is informal, poorly planned, and occurring without corresponding increases in productivity. This contrasts sharply with the experience of the global north, where urbanization largely accompanied industrialization and rising productivity. In that sense, Africa's current urban awakening appears more of a nightmare than a success story. As the Director General has said yesterday, yet it is a nightmare with enormous potential. If properly managed, today's urban transition can become one of Africa's greatest economic assets. Mr. Carlos has outlined several important pathways for achieving this transformation. Allow me to add a few complementary thoughts. First, Africa urgently requires new models of urban governance. Across much of the continent, cities remain governed through third-tier administrative structures with limited authority and resources. Nigeria, sadly, is a notable example of this. Yet, cities are expected to drive national economic growth. In my opinion, the goose expected to lay the golden egg cannot Sorry for that. By way of emphasis, let me repeat. The goose expected to lay the golden egg cannot remain without ownership or proper care. If we expect cities to be the most productive base for our growth, then cities must have effective governance through either the mayoral system or a much more improved administrative framework. Cities require governance institutions specifically designed to manage metropolitan economies. It's even more pressing as many African cities now extend across multiple local government jurisdictions and increasingly across national boundaries. We have seen the seamless growth of the spatial footprint that exists between Lomé, Accra, and Abidjan. This is something that will continue to happen and we need to take a closer look at. The second, we need area-based urban renewal strategies and fit-for-purpose planning, particularly for medium-sized cities, like Mr. Carlos has stated. This will define the future of our great continent. Urban planning must become proactive rather than reactive. Experiences from Kigali and more recently, Egypt's new administrative capital demonstrate how strategic urban development can improve investment, attractiveness, tourism, and business competitiveness. The third point, the promise of the African Continental Free Trade Area cannot be realized without major investments in transport and digital infrastructure. Africa remains the least connected continent in terms of transport networks and broadband connectivity. High logistic costs continue to undermine productivity and regional trade. Distinguished participants, China's Belt and Road Initiative illustrates how corridor-based infrastructure investments can connect cities, integrate supply chains, and stimulate productive urbanization. Africa will require similar investments, adapted to its own context, to fully harness the economic opportunities of continental integration. Finally, I believe our policy responses must become integrated, and that's the point several speakers have spoken to. Urban productivity cannot be addressed through economic policy alone, nor through planning in isolation. It requires collaborative research and coordinated policies that bring together economics, spatial planning, governance, infrastructure, technology, and environmental sustainability. China's experience is a case in point. We need to learn, we need to adapt, and we need to be flexible in the way we approach the planning and development of our continent. In conclusion, Carlos has presented an important and timely paper. Africa's future will undoubtedly be urban. The real question is whether our cities will become engines of productivity or centers of persistent poverty and inequality. If we provide our cities with the right governance systems, strategic planning, infrastructure and policy coordination, Africa's urban awakening will, no doubt, cease to be a source of concern and become the foundation for sustained economic growth, employment creation, and certainly prosperity. I'd like to thank you for this moment. Thank you.